All right, we'll go to 10.2, matters from the council on future agenda items. Mr. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So last week I brought this up during the council member comment period because I was actually planning on doing it during the discussion on the declaration of the homeless emergency, but out of an abundance of caution I recused myself given my role with the St. Vincent de Paul in our service to the homeless. But I brought it up because on April 4th, as I understand it, we're going to revisit the issue of homelessness, and we're going to try to chart a clear path forward for staff on how to address this issue. And it looks like actually in January, we did decide to move in a housing first direction. And I thought that by having an expert come forward before the council, before we have that discussion, would really ensure that all members of the council really understand what Housing First is, why it can be beneficial for our homeless crisis here in the city of Santa Rosa, as well as help frame our discussion going forward so we can give clear guidance to staff. So that was my reason for bringing it forward. I'm sorry if I caught anyone off guard by bringing it up during council member comment, but I'll just leave that on the floor.
All right, and that had a second from Councilmember Rogers last week. Today we need to decide whether to put that on a future agenda, which would be in 2 weeks, I believe, at the soonest. Council, are there any questions about this item?
Would it have to go on as a separate item? What I'm hearing from Councilmember Tibbetts is he wants to just ensure that the already agendized, I guess it would be 2 weeks anyways, never mind.
All right, with no further questions, can we vote on this item? Yes, Mr. Schwedhelm.
Thank you, Mayor. There's additional information, additional discussions that are going on in the community. Specifically, I know the Santa Rosa Homeless Collective is looking at bringing the same subject matter expert that made presentations at the Homeless Summit. City staff has that same information, so we're exploring some of those options. So, and again, April 4th is coming up, so I don't know. A lot of these things are already ongoing. I don't know if we needed a standalone, separate discussion about Housing First, because it's my understanding that April 4th we will be discussing that. So maybe it's somewhat duplicative.
This discussion, as I understand it, would take place at the April 4th meeting.
So on the agenda, the future agenda is that discussion for April 4th.
No, the future agenda would be March 28th.
So I think that's where I came in too, as I was doing the math in my head, thinking that instead of agendizing this for a different meeting, why not just allow this conversation to help shape how that agenda item on April 4th goes?
This is not about the conversation. This is asking the council direct staff to hire a subject matter expert to address the council during the April 4th meeting.
Are
there other questions here?
Are we talking about inviting direction to a specific individual, or are we talking about inviting a different individual since we've heard from one in the community, or what was your intention?
So my intention behind this was to allow staff to pick the subject matter expert, but the expert must be well versed in Housing First. There has been some confusion among staff as well as some confusion amongst people in the public about Housing First. What is it? How is it going to solve this crisis, which is on the forefront of everybody's minds right now? And so I saw this as an opportunity to have the expert come before the council, before the public, to help shape our discussion going forward, which I think will really empower us as a council to give the clear direction that staff needs in order to execute a successful Housing First policy.
Mr. Oliveras.
Yeah, so again, I'm trying to get some clarification. My understanding is on April 4th, we will be receiving information related to Housing First, and that subject matter experts will be presenting that information to us. Is that correct? Or am I wrong? Oh, I guess that's staff. I mean,
yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think staff may be able to chime in.
For clarification, so on April 4th, we have a discussion. Staff will give a report on the current, where we are currently with the subcommittee, with the efforts on the collective, any discussions that have happened to date. They have already given a report on the homeless symposium where there was an expert on Housing First. So at this point, it is not staff's intent to bring experts forward unless council here is directing us to do that. And if that is the case, then I would recommend that we have the expert as a study session and then the discussion as part of the report item on the 4th.
So your suggestion is that we do that all on the same day so that it all kind of flows together?
Yes. If that's the council's desire.
Mr. Sawyer.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I was not here to hear the original request. I'm trying to understand why this is not a duplication of effort and information, unless we have the battle of the experts, which could just result in more confusion as opposed to less. So I'm having a hard time understanding the value of having another subject matter expert come, unless it's a panel discussion where they can discuss their various views, having one at one meeting and another at another meeting, unless it's the same person, and if it is, it's duplication. So I'm not understanding the value. I understand the intention, which we wanted to reduce confusion. We want to educate the council. We want to make sure that the staff is well versed on the concept and the community. But I'm not clear as to how this is going to further that effort if we're doing it again on the 4th. So I'm not understanding the value.
And just to be clear, on the 28th, we would actually be taking up whether to give direction to the staff or not. This is to put that on the agenda for the 28th. Mr. Vice Mayor.
I was just going to say, I can understand your concerns about there being a duplication of efforts. I think in this particular scenario where Housing First is not something that everybody has necessarily completely wrapped their minds around, that second education for the council and for the public, I think, could be helpful. I think it could also be helpful for staff to receive strong direction from us. As far as the experts concerned, I'm okay. I loved Mr. DeJong's presentation at the Housing Summit. I thought he was fantastic. I don't have a preference on who would present, but I think it's important to leave that direction to staff to bring somebody forward that they feel is appropriate.
Mr. Mayor, and again, I guess still a little bit confusion because that was a topic of conversation at the Housing Summit that we had here. That was part of the intent, was to educate council, community. Council was invited and many did participate. So we got that information, and we have been talking and using this model for quite some time. So I think we do have some community expertise in this area related to Housing First. So I understand what we want to do. We want to have that discussion on April 4th. So I'm still not clear on the intent of bringing somebody back again to provide more information. I mean, clearly there is a lot to learn about Housing First. It's not an easy topic, and we continue to learn about it. And I don't know that one more session is going to make us, I don't think we're trying to make us experts. We're trying to be able to get the information that we need to make ultimate decisions as policy decision makers. So again, still getting that clarity. So what you're saying is we're going to bring this back on the 28th for a discussion about bringing it back? Mr. Mayor, I just
on the 28th, it would be whether to direct staff to have a housing expert here on the 4th.
Mr. Mayor, if I may,
yes,
your process is a two-step process that you've adopted. The first step was done at the last meeting,
yes,
which was a motion which was seconded, and that in the process that you've developed through your rules and regulations allowed this item to be put on the agenda, and the item is whether or not to direct staff to put on a future agenda the expert. And so this is the second and final stage of that process. What you would be voting on right now is whether or not to give staff the direction to bring the expert to council.
So I'm confused. But I'm not now because I've had direction from city attorney.
Okay.
Did everybody understand that?
So the motion that is being proposed, it hasn't been articulated just yet, is to some form of giving staff the direction about whether to bring the expert forward at the future agenda. If you vote to do that, the next step would be for staff to go get the expert and get the matter scheduled. And then the substantive discussion of the Housing First item by the expert would take place.
Okay. I apologize to my colleagues for confusing the issue. Are there further questions?
Yes.
Mr. Rogers.
Probably going to confuse the issue a little bit more. So what I'm hearing is we would be, if this passed, approving staff hiring an expert to come to talk to us, but we wouldn't actually look at the cost of the contract to bring the expert in before. Or would we have to agendize a potential contract to approve to bring the expert in?
So you would be directing staff to find an expert. The fee associated with that, while we haven't actually gone to look, I'm confident it would be well within the city manager's signing authority, so we would not be bringing a contract forward.
Perfect, thank you.
Mr. Oliveris, did you have another question?
Yes, I'm still trying to get some clarity. So it's looking at our advanced agendas for April 4th. It looks like it's April 4th will be a homeless day. We have our study session, possible housing first discussion, and then we have the emergency, then we have declaration of the emergency. So I see on the agenda we're going to be discussing the housing first decision. What I'm hearing is that staff does not have enough information they need about housing first. I have not heard that from staff. Council has received information related to housing first at the summit and other places, and we're going to get more of it on the 4th. So I'm still not clear on what is missing as far as our information related to housing first.
I'm not sure that we can count the summit as an explanation to the community of what Housing First is. The idea is to do that in front of the council in this chamber at that time.
Yes, and we have that scheduled for April 4th to do that. I guess that's my point.
Can I just jump in here? This is not meant to replace existing efforts. This is merely intended to supplement existing efforts and strengthen this collective effort going forward.
And I appreciate that, but we're asking for an expenditure, and I'm trying to justify where the need arose. So who's asking for this additional information? Nobody's asking me. So you have information that we don't have apparently.
Sure. So in conversations, it seems like the council did not provide adequate direction to staff on how to execute the Housing First model in the city of Santa Rosa. And so by bringing this expert in, I think what we'd be achieving is put better positioning ourselves to provide better guidance.
I'm sorry, again, that's not the information I'm not hearing that from staff. You're saying that staff did not get adequate information, but staff is not telling us that. So I'm missing where that is coming from.
Ms.
Then
Combs.
that may be the case.
Ms. Combs.
It really doesn't surprise me that we each hear maybe something slightly different on this topic. I actually was surprised because I thought we had adopted a Housing First policy in some way or another some time ago, like a year ago, and then we've readopted a Housing First policy. For me, the concern is how does Housing First, which is a particular route, work with what we do while we wait for there to be enough housing. And so, with current, 7 or 8 year waiting lists for HUD vouchers and folks having to return HUD vouchers because they can't find housing, I support the Housing First model. I'm not too confused about the Housing First model itself. I am concerned about how it works with or in conjunction with our other programs, such as sheltering programs, which are not Housing First, they are managing homelessness programs. Are you asking for the person to come speak to us to clarify that particular concern, or are you asking because you think we need more education specifically on Housing First?
I think it's both. So I think by having an expert in front of us, they may be able to look at what we currently offer in the city and give us kind of a comprehensive approach, going forward in the Housing First direction to complement some of our existing efforts that are in place. So I think that an expert could help us in that arena. The other thing too is I'm just starting to learn Housing First myself, and it's a very dense topic. And so I think the more education we can receive on Housing First, the better position we're going to be to addressing it down the road, and also other policies that influence it. As you said, for example, housing. So understanding kind of the nexus between the two, the provision of housing, and also facilitating getting our homeless friends and neighbors in this community into the housing they need.
Mr. Rogers.
If I might try to find a middle ground here, would it be amenable to you to have in the discussion on April 4th, make sure that staff does a comprehensive overview of Housing First, and then after we can discuss again whether or not you feel there's an additional need to bring in an expert. But that way we still have that educational component within the framework that's already out there.
I appreciate the middle ground, Councilmember Rogers, I do, but I think in this particular situation we should just vote up or down, and this council can collectively decide if this adds value or not.
Mr. Sawyer.
Thank you, Mayor. I also agree that I'm looking forward to a comprehensive and thorough discussion on the 4th, and I'm calling for the question.
Mr. Schwedhelm.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just add one more thing, because just the way I heard you, Mr. Vice Mayor, frame that, if it adds value or not, I think, of course, it would add value. What my concern is that we're going down this path of an isolated impact, because I'd like to know, is the county doing this?
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, the question has been called. My apologies to the council member. The question has been called.
I'm not sure we have a second on this.
That's the question. Is there a second? With my apologies.
I'll second.
All right. Your votes?
About the public.
Oh, sorry about that. I do have one card. Mr. DeWitt.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, my name is Dwayne DeWitt. I'm from Roseland. I'm a longtime member of the Sonoma County Housing Advocacy Group, and I would like for you to put this on the agenda. Some months back, I came and I pointed out that the successful program for Housing First in Utah is known as a national model. The gentleman who helped put that together is named Lloyd Benson. He is willing to come and speak with us. His approach might not be as expensive as others, and I believe could be more effective in the collaborative approach that you folks are looking at. Specifically, one of the things that occurs when governmental agencies try to make decisions based on large community-wide issues is sometimes the community doesn't get involved, but they'd like to be. And I see on today's agenda near the end, you have item 16.1, where you're sending out a letter to the state about housing, and you specifically make some comments in there about how you need to have community involvement in a way. Participate the public to be notified in projects nearby, participate in the planning process, things like that. So this is an excellent opportunity where you could be building some social capital, it's called. Excellent in helping with the housing emergency. This housing emergency has been going on for years, and you folks have kindly at least declared one officially for a number of months, and you'll be doing that again on what Mr. Oliveira stated was Homeless Day, April 4th. And maybe we need a resolution about that to get even more notification and interest in the community. But I'll bring it back to the idea that this is about directing staff to put something on the future agenda, and then for staff to find good people to help you understand Housing First better. The person who was here at the collective was not necessarily one who made it as, I guess you'd say, open-ended for people to understand. That person came and he had his set of approaches, and it was pretty much, it's this way or the highway. And I was like, well, wait a minute. There's a lot of folks living next to the highway right now who might say there's some different approaches. So here's what I'm asking, just as the Sonoma County Housing Advocacy Group will be talking about this. is at least put Mr. Lloyd Benson, who I have no fiscal attachment to in any way, shape, or form. I just know that they are successful in Utah. They made it work, and they did it quickly and rather inexpensively based on other situations that are occurring. And last but not least, it's interesting to see this letter to the state legislature with Mr. Weiner's bill. And I'm looking forward to researching more. Thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you.
I'll put this down.
We have a motion and a second. We have your votes, please. That passes with 4 ayes, 3 noes. The noes are Council Members Oliveris, Schwedhelm, and Sawyer. Thank you.